Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about 7 surprising triggers for an avoidant. And they aren't all bad. You know, a lot of people kind of think that an avoidant is going to get triggered by bad things, like maybe an argument or something like that. But a lot of times they're triggered by things that would be relatively good in a relationship. And when that happens, you're like, I don't understand what happened. Things were going really well.
Yeah.
We talked recently about the couple that got engaged and they got dumped the next day after they got engaged.
Yeah.
I mean, things like that happen all the time. But why are these things happening? It would seem that if things are so good, they'd be happy to be with you. Well, when attachment issues are there, it doesn't quite work like that. Avoidance can shut down. They create distance. They push you away and even leave relationships, even when they have really strong feelings for you. So we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, and we have to remember that we're talking about a fundamentally distrusting kind of attachment style here, right? This was developed because they learned to not trust others to help them and to protect them. So remind yourself of that. This is coming from that place of vulnerability and is difficult for them too. So we're going to talk about an array of triggers. The first being pressure for emotional vulnerability. And this, on your partner's end, on your end, might come from a very well-intentioned place. You might be saying, I want this person to feel comfortable. I want them to open up. I want to get to know them. I want to be supportive of them. I want to know their traumas and be there. But sometimes, and we, especially as therapists and clinicians, can be super guilty of this. We play therapist in our relationship, and this can show up in a very difficult dynamic, right? Now we're trying to get this information out of our partner. They feel pressured. They shut down more. They don't know what your motives are, your incentives are here. They feel distrusting that you want them to open up. And this can be really triggering for them, even if you mean well.
Yeah. Opening up is very triggering. You would think that people would feel good about it, but a lot of times it brings up trauma and a lot of unresolved issues.
Right. And, on your end, you might just be wanting to have those deeper kind of emotional conversations or talking about feelings, or maybe you're needing some reassurance. And so what closeness feels like for you, it can feel like pressure for them. So just remember that part, that in itself can be a trigger. And I think we have other videos on, how to approach avoidance with, emotionally sensitive topics and things like that.
Yeah. Another big thing that we see with avoidance is that if they feel like their need for space is denied, they're going to push back. And many times it's just accidental. If you see somebody is, needing a little space, and sometimes they ask for it, sometimes they don't, sometimes they just take it. Maybe they want to go out with their friends more or just spend more time alone, or they just need a mental break. A lot of times if they're with an anxious partner, especially, if they're like badgering them, like, I don't know what, let's talk. What's bothering you? I know they're going to, I want to talk about this. And they're just like, they can't handle it, right? You know the feeling. It's not even about the words, the feelings that come from you. When you start, and they are just like, they feel like they're trapped. They feel like, I can't deal with this. I can't handle this. And they start to push back because they need their autonomy a bit. You may see them get irritable. They lash out. They say a nasty comment to you. And sometimes they start a fight.
Oh, yeah.
Because they know if you fight, you won't talk for a couple days.
I've heard as far as people making up things that would anger the other person just to leave them alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they'll come up with things that aren't even a big deal just because they're desperately looking for something to get that space.
Right.
But when you keep pushing them, it actually makes them push back even further and harder. So you have to be aware of your own internal hypervigilance to repair and force the repair before they're ready.
So the next one is when things are actually going good and there's been a step in emotional vulnerability. So let's say you do have that conversation. Let's say they are not needing as much space as usual, and they kind of give in a little bit. Maybe they're enjoying that connection. Maybe things are starting to seem a little bit too good to be true, right? So even in those moments where it seems like things are going smoothly, in the back of the avoidance mind is, this can't be trusted. Something's going to go wrong any minute. It's never this peaceful. I always have to be on alert. I always have to have my guard up. So sometimes things will be flowing very well in a relationship. Sometimes you might be feeling as if, as a couple, you've been making a lot of strides, and then there can be some regression there because they're worried about what that going well means or what it could lead to, and how quickly things can escalate when it feels like things are going well.
Yeah, like, oh, well, now she's gonna really want to get married. Things have been going so well for a while, and they get scared and sabotage things. Okay, so this is some surprising ones. These are the good things. Trips and vacations.
This is so common. If I had to list like the most common one, it would probably be around this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go on a vacation, but listen, vacations are stressful.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, sometimes you're like, where are we going? What are we doing? There's pressure. Your routine is messed up. There's flights and travel time, and you get tired from that kind of stuff. And you would think that because it's such a great thing, boy, I've seen a lot of avoidants break up with somebody or start a big fight on the trip over something small to have that space.
Because if you think about it, it's like a teamwork activity, and it takes trust. I have to trust that you're going to have your passport and your boarding pass, and be organized, and we can coordinate. And so there's a lot that goes into it. But yes, there's a lot of triggers within trips and vacations. And even for couples that live together, right, you are spending a good amount of time together, but you still have work, you still have other things that you do kind of in between that breaks up your time together. On a vacation, most of the time it's 24/7,
and you're a lot of times in a small room. You don't have a lot of physical space from each other too. And their routine is messed up. A lot of avoidants like their routine.
That's true. That is very true. So look out for that. If you have an upcoming trip with somebody who leans more avoidant, just take things easy.
Yeah, you got to give them a little space even on the vacations.
Yeah, that's true. Now the next one is bringing up commitment or the future too soon. Now, the interesting one about this one, and the reason why it's surprising, is because sometimes it is them that brings it up. Sometimes it's them that's saying, oh my gosh,
a lot of times
we should move in together soon, or, oh, let's look at rings, right? So they could be the one provoking the progression. I'm going to trademark that, provoking the progression, right? And then they are also the ones that get triggered. And I see this as, a biting off more than you can chew type of situation, where they come on very strong, they get this excitement, they're finally connecting with someone, which for an avoidant is very scarce. It's very difficult to trust, but when they don't have too much stake in the game, it's easier to do that, right? So they can come on strong, and then they realize what they've done. Once they realize, oh crap, this means actual commitment, this means actual obligation, this means actual work.
Well, right? The idea of it sounds like a beautiful fantasy, but the reality of it is much more challenging to live it every day.
Oh yeah.
A lot of time now people are calling it future faking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen this for years, but it's that avoidant fantasy of, it feels magical. It feels like we're going to get married and have kids together and have this fantasy. And then by month 3, they're like, I can't do this.
Yeah. And for them, it's that fear
You brush your teeth twice a day. Can't stand it. It's usually something like, what? Why would you want to end it over this?
Yeah. And I've heard really ridiculous ones too, where it's, really, really reaching. So.
Oh yeah. Well, they can't come up with anything real because you oftentimes have treated them so well, especially in the beginning when there hasn't even been time to fight or something like that.
Yeah. For them, they feel like they're losing that independence. For them now, it's starting to become very real. And that's something that could be very triggering for them and cause them to step back and reevaluate and doubt and have questions. So, consider that. If you find somebody who's very, very eager to move things on very quickly, pace yourself. And you can also set the pace for an excited, coming on strong avoidant person, and sometimes that's something I hear from you all, where it's, I was the one that was kind of leaning back and like, oh, are you sure about this? And I don't know.
Yes.
So that does happen, and pace yourselves. Okay. Pace yourselves.
All right, this one happens a lot too.
Colin.
High emotion events, weddings, holidays, meeting family.
Huge.
Right? It feels like so much pressure that these things become overwhelming, and then there's a fight. Something small causes a fight, and next thing you know, you're arguing at 3 o'clock in the morning over something silly because it's not really about the issue. The issue isn't really the issue. It's about the pressure of the expectations, the idea of, oh my gosh, now I've met their friends, their family. Now this means we're more serious, and now I have to worry about what these other people think about me.
Yeah, there can be a lot more pressure there. And just the themes, if you go to a wedding and you're hearing all about commitment, you're watching other people do that, that can be really triggering, because then you start to think, well, are we next? And what does that mean? And, it can feel like a lot of pressure. So consider all of those things. Emotional events can come with their intensity to it. Once again, pace yourself, try to take things easy as you go about these events, and always give options, right? Mm-hmm. And I know many of you do, where you'll tell your partner, or if you have told your ex, hey, you can come to this if you'd like. This is an optional, right? I find that pressuring to these events can sometimes lead to even more tension.
Absolutely.
So just consider those things. All right, the final big one is life stress and emotional overload. And I say this because so many of us who are anxious, that are in a relationship with somebody who's more avoidant, self-blame. Oh, I'm the reason why they're pulling back. And because of that self-blame, you are micromanaging all of your behaviors. If I breathe too heavy, then they're going to leave me. If I stomp too hard and walking out the house, they're going to leave me. You start to analyze every behavior, and you think that all of their avoidant reactions are because of you. We don't live in a bubble. We don't live in a bubble. We live in a world with other people and external factors and external influences. And so it could be something else going on in their life that's affecting how emotionally available they are with you. People handle stress in different ways, and those who are more avoidant tend to shut down, close in, kind of act like a turtle in their shell.
Absolutely. If you're going through a situation where these things have happened and you feel terrible about it, you may feel like it was my fault or I did something wrong here. It doesn't mean you necessarily did anything wrong. And that can be even the more confusing component about it, is if you didn't do anything, quote unquote, wrong, it's all about them and them just feeling overwhelmed. It's an awful feeling. And unfortunately, oftentimes you guys are the ones feeling the real pain of it when they're the ones walking away, and you're like, we were supposed to get an apartment and now they're leaving. Or we just move in together and it's only been 3 months and they're leaving because the cat box, we're arguing about the cat box.
Yeah.
Things like that. So these are all normal things that we see with avoidance, because emotional connection can be overwhelming and too much, and it leads to these arguments, and nobody's going to be perfect, but you really want to do your best to understand these triggers, whether you're doing things to trigger them or if you're the one getting triggered. Learning to be more okay with these things and the differences that your partner has, so you can make a loving relationship work.
Yeah, and to prepare, I find that sometimes when people are experiencing these triggers, either for themselves or seeing their partner go through these triggers and they're not aware of it, they start to question everything, So we tell you all of this just so that you can emotionally prepare yourself a little bit. Okay, there's a big event coming, or we have some trips planned. Prepare yourself emotionally on how to handle these things if these are triggers to your avoidant partner or to yourself.
Yep. The more you're aware of these things, the better you're going to be likely to navigate them and not just blindly surprised by them.
Right, exactly.
All right. Hopefully this one's been helpful to you. If you'd like to get our help personally, you could do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Zoom calls. Coach Victoria is also available for Zoom calls.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. That's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.